and I can't write, I can't sing, but if they see you worshiping God however you feel led, they're going to feel the liberty to do that also. One thing I want to go a little gratitude. He said people who live a life of gratitude are usually more successful. So, there's other benefits to that. Successful people usually have an attitude of gratitude. And then when I was going over this, I read the writings of David, and I'm not sure how to say his last name, Rohrer. Anybody know who I'm talking about? Rohrer. I read some of his writings about worship, and he says that gratitude is the stem cell of worship. And gratitude is something that, it's not something that you can really all the time display. If you can live a life of gratitude, and maybe nobody may not actually see that as something they can identify in you, but they'll see the results of it. And all these wonderful things that I talked about, and I have nothing against singing. I love it. I wish I could do more of it. I wish I was better at it. And I would love to be able to play guitar or something fun like that. But those are just elements of worship. Where is the worship? The worship is inside you. That makes me feel good. Somebody who might not be the best at everything, if I have that worship inside me, it really doesn't matter. What matters is what is in there, and that God wants to be a part of that. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Some of the things that I have written down that I just want to share with you, the elements of worship, as we talked about, they are the vehicles we use to express what is beyond words. Sometimes we may not be able, and this happens to me a lot of times, I just don't have the words to say what I want to say, especially when I'm talking about God, because I just don't feel like there's a word created yet that can describe God. And I'm at a loss for words sometimes. Worship calls for an awareness of a relationship with the living God. And I think that's just awesome. It isn't born of the beauty of our expressions of praise in music or art. These things may add to it, but if we're not careful, sometimes they can also take away from it. So just let that sink in a little bit. That was kind of scary to me. They can take away from the worship if we're not careful, the elements that we may use. The reason for our worship is what? It's gratitude. So living a life of gratitude is, I think, a very, very high form of worship. It's not about or because of what we receive from God. There's a lot of people that think when you go to church, you listen to the singing, you get up, you get involved in everything, and you get blessed, and you go home and you feel really, really good. And that happens, and I'm not dissing that. That's we need that. That's important. But when that's over, where are we? We need to be careful and realize that, sometimes those things are just fleeting moments. It's fleeting joy or happiness. I'm not going to say joy. It's fleeting moments of happiness that we can experience. It's not about or because of what we receive from God, but it is what we give to God. Our true worship is what we give Him. And I want you to think about this Bible verse. I wrote down, it's in Acts 17:28. It says, "In Him we live and move and have our being." So, like Darlene said a while ago, it's a lifestyle. It's not just something that we do on Sunday morning. It's something that we do on Monday morning and Tuesday. And all week long, it's something that we do continually with our lives. In Thessalonians, it says, "In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus." And when I read that today, and you know how many times I've read this Bible verse? I cannot even count how many times I've read this Bible verse or heard it spoken to me or heard it preached about. But it says, "In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God." It didn't say it was the way of God, but I'm going to be honest with you. Every time I ever read this or heard it, that's what kind of, how you'll hear something and you know what the word says, but yet there's another word that's interjected in your mind. The way of God was what was interjected in my mind. I thought, this is the way of God. And that's not bad. It would still be a good Bible verse if it said that. But it says this is the will of God. This is the way he would will you to live. He would will you to live in a way that's not just a Sunday morning good feeling, or it's not just a good song that you hear during the week. It's the way you live every single day of your life. And that's important because that's God's will for you. And if you are following God's will, then that's like the ultimate worship. So that's something we need to consider. Another one that I wrote down is James 1:17. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above. It says worship service is not primarily, and I found this quote in this, it was in a book that I was reading, I think. Worship service is not primarily about what we receive from God, but what we give to God. What fuels our worship is not an emptiness that we can come seeking to have filled, but a fullness that cannot contain itself and must be expressed. I thought that was pretty good. He is not in the business of simply improving our lives, although he does that. If you meet Jesus, you're going to have a life improvement. Every encounter is probably going to be an improvement that you have. But he also wants to infuse our lives with his. Isn't that beautiful? I love it. So that's, worship is something that is not just something that we prepare for on Sunday morning and our Wednesday night, our Sunday night. It's a lifestyle. It's an everyday thing. And I guess what I want to do is just kind of encourage you, and most of y'all are probably already doing this anyway, just start consciously practicing what they call an attitude of gratitude. I've heard that a lot. Just have an attitude of gratitude. There's so many things that we can be thankful for. I know right now some people, and I hear this a lot, things are just getting so crazy. This world's just getting so crazy, and it is. I understand that. And it's not going to get any different. It's probably going to just continue down the same path, but you don't have to go with it. You don't have to get involved in that crazy. You get involved in gratitude. Start thinking of how wonderful God is and how wonderful it is to know him, because I know my dad was that kind of person. And I don't know if any of you knew my dad, but I used to go to their house sometime, and I'd go through the house and I couldn't find Dad sometimes, and I would finally go out to the back door, and I would see him outside sitting in the swing, and I would say, "Daddy, what are you doing?" And my daddy was not in good health. He was almost blind. There was a lot of things he couldn't see, but he loved nature, he loved God, and he loved God's creation. And he would say, it's hard for me to talk about my daddy without crying, but he would say, "I'm just out here enjoying the presence of the Lord." He's sitting out there by himself in the swing, but God was with him. He might not could have seen everything, but God was with him, and that's what he saw, and that's all that mattered, and that's all that matters to us. If we don't see anything else, let's see God. Let's see God in everywhere we look, because he's there. You're his creation. This world is his creation, and you can find God anywhere. And let's have a life of, and I'm not talking about y'all. I haven't arrived. I want you to know that. This is speaking to me, so I'm speaking it to you. Let's, Sabrina, live a life of gratitude, and that we'll be able to worship God in spirit and in truth that way.
Man, thank you for that. That was an awesome presentation. Leave that up here. I'll preach that tomorrow. I don't have to write my sermon. That's okay. Don't worry about the saying. So what we're going to do is we're going to give free tuition to the first pastor who drinks this. Well, you're from Carbon Hill, so I'm not real surprised. Y'all make stuff like this down where y'all are. And I'm kidding, I'm joking. We are live streaming. Of course, if you know me, it's not the stupidest thing I've ever said on live stream. But I'm going to be up here for just a few minutes. If you see me and my wife and my daughter dip out here in a minute, we have a daddy-daughter dance we have to go to, and that's very important. And so, but I want to just come up here for a few minutes, kind of shift gears and talk about some job descriptions. So I know most of you guys in here, but how many of y'all in here, if is there anybody here, this is your first year working camp? First year working camp, okay. All right. So most of you guys in here have worked camp. For you guys that haven't worked camp, we're just going to kind of go over the job descriptions, and I'm not going to be here long because most of you guys kind of know what you're doing. If you're anything like me, I've been here in Alabama for 15 years as a youth pastor and now a senior pastor, and then I was in South Carolina in the Church of God of Prophecy for a long time, so I'll be 41 here in a couple of weeks. I've been working camp since I was 19. I've done everything from working in the kitchen to be camp pastor to doing all this kind of crazy stuff. So most of you guys in here have probably done a little bit of everything. I remember one year in South Carolina, we were short-staffed at camp, and that's back when you when you were younger and you worked all the camps. Anybody ever done that before? And if you guys, there's our state youth director. Some of you guys may know him in South Carolina. His name's Chucky Chandler, and Chucky's a nut like me. And one day I had worked 3 straight weeks of camp. And I'm pulling out, going home to back to Greenville, South Carolina, about an hour and a half drive. I had fallen asleep at a 4-way stop because I was so tired, okay? How y'all know there's a no level of tired like camp tired, all right? All right? And so Chucky stops me on the way out of camp and goes, I need you to work a 4th week in a row. And I need you to do that. So there's nothing I haven't done. I've showed up to camp before, and I thought I was going to be an evangelist for that week, and I've had the greatest job ever, right? I just get to preach every night and hang out during the day, and I ended up having to be the dean and the director because somebody had a death in their family. So it's kind of crazy, but I'm going to read just an overview of each and every one of these positions here, and it's going to seem a little bit redundant, but this is also for the people we're live streaming for, but I'll start out with camp pastor. Basically, our camp pastor, you're directing things kind of spiritually, and so I'm going to be leaning on you guys as a director, as a pastor myself. I'm going to kind of take a little bit of that hat off as a director, and I'm going to really count on all of us, but especially my camp pastor, to be hearing from the Lord, to moderate services, to be spending as much time with the campers as possible, because a lot of times, sometimes as camp pastors, we can kind of get in our own little world, but that's also a good time. Be available to counsel, do those things as needed, pray for camp and staffers, especially if you're working my camp. I'm going to be real big on the camp pastor being in the altar with people and praying and doing those type of things. So that is kind of a little bit of a one-person job here, but the deans, Tommy and Darlene are going to be our deans, and I don't have to worry about anything. I'm going to show up to camp and go, here you go, all right? You shouldn't be scared of Tommy. You should be real scared of Darlene, okay? She's the only person I know who slits your throat with a smile on her face and watch you bleed, all right? And I'm going, do it again, sis, do it again. They were with us when I used to direct senior camp. Now, I'm just going to tell you this. I've agreed to do this for 4 years. I will not go back to the 12 to 14-year-old camp because they're weird and they stink, all right? They're just weird, okay? But deans, your biggest thing is assisting. So when somebody asked me to be a dean, can I tell y'all a funny story that me and Jacob just had an interaction about? We had a conversation. Now, this tells you how busy this time of year is, okay? We had a conversation probably 2 or 3 months ago that I had forgotten about. And I leaned over to Jacob, and this tells you where our minds are right now. Now, Byron and Sabrina are probably the most organized out of all of us. We want to be like them, okay? She's going, y'all don't know us, right? I leaned over to Jacob, and I said, Jacob, who are y'all's camp deans this year? And he's like, well, I thought it was going to be you and your wife. And I was like, oh, yeah, I totally knew about that. Totally forgot about that conversation. So as a dean, which is something you may have done before, if you haven't, the biggest thing is making sure, I'm big on making sure the kids are supposed to be where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be, okay? Herd them with that, get on that golf cart and herd them like cattle wherever they need to go. But your responsibility is to be a supervisory person to the cabin leaders and other staff, assist in matters of discipline. Of course, we know as deans, there's some things you have to bring to directors. My very first year of directing, how many of y'all know when you go on that other side of the camp and you're waiting on your food in that glass dome, weird-looking Hunger Games thing we got going on there? That glass was there when Jesus was born. That's no joke. It was your grandparents ate under that glass, okay? The very first year I ever directed, 2 kids busted that 40-year-old piece of glass. And so I had to lean on my deans because I was ready to choke slam 12-year-olds, okay? But you're responsible to regulate all the lineup at meal times, all those things that are the day-to-day operation of what's happening at camp. And most of you guys, if you've been deans before, you kind of know how that, and of course, the overall job description for that's the same, but each director may have something more specific there, okay? So big important role. Daily staff meetings. One of the things as a director, I always like to have people that experience like Darlene and them is when they show up, and Jacob and them, anybody will probably tell you guys, any of these directors tell you the same thing. We're doing a lot of this stuff now, so when we get there, I look at those deans and go, you guys are running things, and if it's something big, come find us. Otherwise, we've done all the organization side of it. We're going to be present, but I want to spend time doing other things now. And so the deans help us out with that. We have secretary. If you haven't been a secretary before, that's kind of another one of those. Is there a camp that Cadian's not the secretary for? Okay, so we're going to skip that because that's Cadian's job. If you want to talk to her about that. I don't know if some of you guys in here are most of mine are not in here, but the evangelists and the camp speakers, if you're doing that, here's the biggest thing I'm going to say about a camp speaker, okay? Don't do anything stupid. Don't say anything crazy or off the wall. Just be there, understand that you're there to minister throughout the camp session. You know, find opportunities, especially if you're speaking one night and you're also doing some other type of staff member job. Don't just be the nightly speaker. Get involved in the camp and don't just be there when it's time for you to speak. And be ready to speak. I've seen so many people, I've been guilty of this myself in the 20 years I've been doing this, show up not prepared. And let me tell you this, God can do some amazing things, but if you're not prepared, it's not going to be what God wants it to be overall. So be prepared in that. So we have the camp nurse. Anybody else is Kim here? I know she's going to be our camp nurse. Anybody else going to be a camp nurse in here? Do you know what to do? Hang on for the ride's what you need to do, okay? I'm going to tell you something. Y'all know me, I like to be funny, but I'm serious. Please make them take their medicine. Y'all know what kids I'm talking about? Y'all know what kids I'm talking about. Don't act all spiritual. Y'all know the kids I am talking about. That kid that's got a medicine to wake up, a medicine to stay awake, a medicine to go to bed. Come bedtime, take your medicine in Jesus' name. Jesus ain't healed you from that yet. Take your medicine, okay? All right? Force it down their throat like you would a dog with a piece of cheese, okay? Take the medicine, okay? If they got ADD like me, I got A through Z, R, Q, G, S, R-5. Make them take the medicine, okay? All right, so if you are not the camp nurse, don't be giving kids medicine. Please don't do that, all right? Unless they really need it, and just don't tell nobody. Worship leader, if you're being the worship leader at camp, make sure your worship is age appropriate. Remember one time I went and worked a camp with the little ones. You guys that do the camps with the little ones, y'all bless your heart. And they sang Blue Book hymns. Nothing wrong with Blue Book hymns. Those kids don't know Blue Book hymns. Do something age appropriate. And again, be prepared. Be prepared. Am I doing a good job with this? Am I doing? Okay. All right. If you're teaching, that's probably, to me, one of the most underutilized, underrated jobs at camp. Because if you're anything like we're going to do our camp, you're going to be teaching, we're going to have 4 different classes at collegiate camp, and you're going to be teaching a different group every day. That way, they sign up for all 4 different classes. It's going to be on a different topic. Make sure that your presentation is relevant. You're not just standing there talking. I'm not saying you got to get up and stand on your head and juggle and be entertaining, but make sure it is relevant. Make sure it is scripturally sound, and set a good example. And I'm going to read here, and you guys see that behind you. And try to motivate the campers to interact. And it's going to be a little bit harder because by the end of the week, how many of y'all know everybody's tired? And so if you make your class a lot more interesting and a little bit more interactive, that will help. And I know I'm speeding through this, but most of y'all. Team competition, most important thing the whole week. All right. So anybody here doing team comp? Brandon's doing team comp. From any other team comp people in here? I think that is the hardest job. It's crazy. All right. And how many of y'all know you got them people? And I'm just going to be blunt because it's just us in here. We do athletic things and non-athletic things because you got those kids that show up that are athletic, right? You love those kids. You got that kid that shows up that has put his Harry Potter book down 1 minute of his whole life, and he's about as athletic as a football bat, okay? Do stuff that he can do, too. Some of y'all get that joke here in a second. But some of y'all are like, I've never seen a football bat, okay? Make sure that you have things for them to do. I don't know if we're even allowed to do this because I hadn't been super connected with camp. I love gross stuff. I watched somebody drink something out of a muddy sock one time. We don't do stuff like that no more? No. Are y'all that? What a bunch of pansies we got coming to camp now. I watched somebody eat a raw egg off of the concrete. I know it was you. That's why I mentioned it. I looked at you and saw that, again, from Winston County, if you know anything about it. I'm just joking. No, make sure it's something that everybody could do. So we do have those ones that are not as athletic, and you got some ones that I always loved having that one kid that was really super smart, because I got that one kid that's an athlete, and not that athletes aren't smart, but I'm depending on him. And then we get to something that needs to be figured out, and that one kid was like, this is my time to shine. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, do this algorithm. Here you go. All right. So I'm speeding through this. Am I hitting the high points? Am I doing okay? All right. I'm just here because I love Jesus, and they couldn't find anybody else. So support staff. All right. I'm big on support staff. Y'all have a big job. I want you to have, this is what I'm going to tell everybody. I'm going to go old school on you here, okay? Support staff is one of the hardest things you'll do. And people ask me all the time, can we stay up? Can we do this? Can we do this? I'm going to get down to the brass tacks of it. I tell my support staff this: stay up as late as you want to stay up, but your behind better be at breakfast and you better be ready to work the next day, okay? Don't be lazy being support staff. You're there. And support staff's not one of those things we're asking you to do because you can't do anything else. It is that important, and especially if the more campers we have. If I've seen this working camp in North Carolina, South Carolina, going to Georgia, being here in Alabama, if as support staff, if it gets slack towards the end of the week, then that last night you got to clean everything up is going to be hellacious, okay? And kids are nasty. Adults are nasty. Listen, I've walked into some of y'all's cabins. Y'all are nasty. Something is wrong with you, okay? All right? But make sure that you're doing your job. You must attend staff meetings, stick with the schedule. And my biggest pet peeve, and I bet I speak for every camp director in here, I know I can speak for Jacob and definitely Byron and Sabrina, be where you're supposed to be, and even towards the end of the week when you're getting tired, because you're getting, I'm going to say this is not forgive me for saying that you're kind of getting the crap jobs. I know you're tired, but be there, hang in there. Don't make us come find you to do your job, okay? And if you're support staff, you know what to do. You've probably done it before. Snack Shack, if you look like me, Snack Shack's very important, okay? Be there, have it ready to go, because I'm going to get a Snickers and a Diet Pepsi because they offset each other, okay? Don't laugh. Y'all do the same thing, you know what I'm saying? My boy walked in here with 2 Celsius waters today because he's in it to win it. That's right. We're going to need a camp nurse when your heart explodes and comes out through your nostril here in a minute. But we may enlist some people helping there. If you see, this is another big thing, you need to see people that are, if they're hurting for staff, jump in and help out at Snack Shack, okay? Have y'all seen, again, some of these kids eat? They are ready for snack, okay? Lifeguard, don't let people drown. Moving on. I wish I had something deeply profound in the scripture to tell you, but I don't. Here's that in Greek. Don't let people drown, okay? All right? But you must be certified to be a lifeguard. Don't be like, hey, I'm a lifeguard, and you can't swim because you got one of them bands and you doggy paddle, okay? You can't do that. I can walk across most of the pool. I ain't going to drown, okay? But me and Nathan are good, okay? But make sure that you are doing the right thing. And listen, please, 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 please pay attention when you're out there, especially with those little ones. Yeah, I can swim, and I've watched them go all the way to the bottom of the pool like a rock, okay? But keep the pool area clean and organized. I remember one year we had a lifeguard several years ago, and I directed, and we went into the pool one time, and there was like Band-Aids everywhere, and we had to close the pool for a little while because we had a floaty friend in the pool. Yeah, some of you had that gagging. I did the same thing. We don't want that, because it's 917 degrees above hell at Camp Boothe. We want to be able to keep the pool open, okay? Cabin leader, I believe, the most important job at Camp Boothe, okay? I actually miss being a cabin leader. Don't miss sleeping on those beds, but here, to be honest with you, I'm just sleeping on the same bed. It's just a little bit bigger, okay? And most of y'all's feet don't hang off the end, right, Nathan? So I don't want to hear them complain. All right, but cabin leaders, y'all make or break camp, in my opinion, okay? And maybe you're a cabin leader in here. I remember my younger years, and I always thought, man, I wish I was the dean or the director. No, you don't, okay? I wish I was. Cabin leading is the most important job. You make or break what happens at camp, okay? So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this and speed through some of these. But be there. And what we do, if we work multiple weeks of camp, we try to start, and we do this kind of subconsciously because let's just be honest. It's just us here. This is a private live stream we're on. If you are a cabin leader for multiple weeks, you'll end up getting to the point where you just don't like people's kids anymore. You're like, I don't like it. You're not even sure if you love Jesus after about week 2. You're just trying to make it through, okay? But you got to understand, I would not be standing right here today, and I've joked around a lot, let me be serious, if it wasn't for one cabin leader in South Carolina that changed my life. It was Jesus, but it was working through this guy that changed my life. And I knew I was called to ministry because that person took advantage of just taking time to be with me, a kid that come from a broken home, that come from a drug addict's home, that was being abused, that was being neglected, and I got 1 week of peace in my life. And that was church camp. And they took it seriously. So, man, have fun, but take it seriously. You know what to do. Be where you're supposed to be up on time, make sure your kids are where they're supposed to be. Sit with your kids. Listen, if you come to collegiate camp and you're a cabin leader, do not try to sit on that back row and get away from them. Go sit with them, okay? Make sure they don't go to the bathroom 110 times. We got new toilets down there, but make sure they don't break them in right, okay? Some of them think they got to go to the bathroom 127 times, okay? All right? But be with them wherever. That's the biggest thing. And especially those nightly sessions when you are at night, when you're in there and you're doing that kind of wind down time, that's a crucial time. I have seen lives change during that. But guys, you know all the details. Most of y'all have been cabin leaders before, so if you have any questions, we'll get to that. And if you're a first-time cabin leader, hang on for the ride, all right? You're going to have that one kid that tests your patience, right? That one kid that's going to make sure to test your salvation, right? But I'm going to tell you, that'll be the kid that'll never forget you. I had a kid one year in South Carolina threaten to kill me. That's no joke. I just looked at him. He was about 300 pounds, about 5'8". You ain't going to kill me. You can't run that quick, okay? You look like me. You ain't running. No, he was joking around. He had a bad home life. That was his. And to this day, I see that kid when I go home to South Carolina, and he'll thank me. Some of you guys will remember, my wife remembers this kid. Any of y'all remember Trey? Do y'all remember Trey? Trey was about this big. And he loved me. He said, Pastor Dustin, give me a ride on the golf cart. And I'm like, Trey, keep walking. You know what I'm saying? I can see that kid to this day somewhere, and he knows me because in all our joking around and spiritual time, he remembers that time we prayed with him. I prayed with Jacob. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Jacob was in my cabin, okay? Now he's an old guy, all right? I remember those times. You remember those times. So you guys are playing a pivotal role here, all right? Moving right along. Do we have any kitchen staff in here? That's a pretty self-explanatory role. That'll be probably a little more explained to you by the person that's over the kitchen when you get down there. But we are super thankful for you, okay? If you're working in the kitchen, we are super, super thankful for you. Do not complain about the food, and if you don't like carbs, it's probably at the camp for you. Because we're going to have bread sandwiches with french fries and potatoes all week, okay? All right. Camp carbohydrate, baby. That's how we roll. All right. If you're on the Atkins diet, which that's my last name, obviously it doesn't work. So, all right. If you're the photographer of social media, which is Haley, do your job, okay? We're done with that part. Or your mom's going to fire you because she's your boss. No, make sure you're there. So, biggest thing here to remember. Also, please don't take videos, and somebody will talk about that. My wife will talk about that in the rules. Is that don't do anything like that could be taking somebody's dressing, getting undressed, and even you do something by accident, taking a picture. Obviously, you don't mean to do that, so be careful in doing that. If you have any questions, we can give you a copy of this. I know I didn't hit everything, but most of you guys in here are experienced. If you're not experienced in doing what you're doing, I promise you when you get to Camp Boothe, there's going to be people that are going to surround you. You're going to get there, and by the end of day one, everything's going to click. And if you have any questions, there's tons of seasoned people around you who know how to do that. But I'm going to let my lovely wife come up here and explain the rules. Don't do stupid stuff. All right, we're done.
Yeah. All right. Where are we at, Brandon? Go to hazing. All right. Well, I'm going to read it as soon as it gets up there. I'm going to go through all these rules, and I'm not going to hit every one of them, the ones that I really think is important. I'm really not worried about collegiate camp because our deans will not put up with anything that I'm about to say. Praise the Lord. It matters who your deans are. You better pray for me and Dustin. Okay, so hazing is prohibited at Camp Boothe. Don't do it. Any staff participating in any form of hazing will be dismissed from the camp. Dustin Atkins. No smoking, no alcoholic beverages. That's self-explanatory. Do not bring it on the campus at all. No firearms, knives, or any other forms of weapons. They are prohibited on the campground. If we find it, you will be dismissed, and your camper will be dismissed. We have a camp photographer, Miss Haley over here. My husband touched on this. No pictures at all should be taken in the cabin or the pool areas. Please remind your staff of that. No pets or animals, Brandon. We had a camp dog last year. When you leave the cabin, make sure your staff knows that all irons, curling irons, straighteners, everything's turned off. Listen, this shouldn't have to be said, but you might have to remind some people, one camper per bed and one camper in the shower at a time. Please remember that, especially the little ones and, the ones, senior camp, you might need to remind yours. No water balloons, water guns, none of that. The golf carts, most of the directors in here, golf carts are off limits anyways to your staff. At ours it is, and I know senior last year. But basically nobody under the age of 16 to drive a golf cart, only staff members. No more riders than what the golf cart's built for. Park. When you show up to work camp, park down by the kitchen or up by the pool area, okay? So all staff parking, you guys know where that's at. Do not sit in the cars. There's a no visitor policy for Camp Boothe, and that also means no door dashing. We had that last year. Wasn't that last year, Jacob? We had a camper that actually door dashed. Darlene and Tommy, if that happens. And they met him in the woods, didn't they, Jacob? Oh my gosh. Pastor's night will be on Friday during our commissioning service, so the pastors will come on Friday. No staff members may leave the campgrounds without the director's permission. We run into a little bit of that last year at senior camp. After permission, all staff must sign out with the secretary in the staff house and sign upon return. This is self-explanatory. Cabin leaders must be 18 years of age. All staff between the ages of 16 and 19 must attend collegiate camp unless you've talked to Denise over here. And staff also should turn all medication to the camp nurse before camper arrival. This next part's basically none of the staff, unless it's been pre-approved, can bring any family members with them, any friends, anybody like that to camp to work. Cabin leaders must stay in their cabins each night with the campers, no exception. And at our camp, Tommy and Darlene are literally the last ones that will go to sleep at night, and they always make sure the campers and everybody's where they're supposed to be. So staff personnel should not arrive at camp until appointed time by the directors. Staff can't leave unless the directors know about it. All staff will be required to attend pre-camp staff meeting. That's basically what we're doing right here, Denise, right? Yeah. Okay. No male or female staff members should be alone at any time on camp property. Treat campers equally. Do not show favoritism. Have daily processing time. Make sure all campers are attentive and participating. Be careful how your conversations go. Always be positive at camp to help others. Single and married staffers should be careful of their conduct. Staff personnel should always be at camp for the sole purpose of ministering to campers. Make sure you're involved in the activities and/or services, and read the schedule and be on time. All staff personnel should be in their designated sleeping quarters at lights out. Yes, praise the Lord. Male and female staff members should not be alone in any room or building unless married. That's for your safety too. As a staff member, your loyalty and responsibility is to the camp directors. Never complain about anything to anyone other than the coordinator, which is Denise, the director, or the deans. Remember the chain of responsibility. Unity is a must among the staff. Work together and support one another in prayer. Check your cabin. Have your cabin leaders to check their cabin, sleeping areas prior to camp start. Report any issue to the director. If something needs to be repaired or anything, make sure you fill out the form. Let Katie know. We'll get that handled. Painter's tape only should be used on walls of all buildings. Limit use of your phones. If it is necessary to use your cell phone, do it away from the campers. Attend all activities unless it's designated break. Be an example to the campers by obeying rules, both written and unwritten. Make sure there is an adequate supervision at all times and at all activities. Staff members should not be alone again with a single camper at any time. And if you see it, I'm just going to put this in there. If you see a staff member alone with a camper at any time, you need to report it to Denise, the directors, or the deans. No exception. Doesn't matter who it is. Okay, I needed to put that in there. Pee-wee Discovery campers should be by an adult when returning to the cabins. Senior and collegiate campers should be in groups of 3, if not with a staff member. If you get to an activity and a camper is not there, report it to your dean or director or the coordinator. Cabin leader remain with the campers at all times. Spread out during the services for better supervision. Children, youth learn by example. Be a positive example. Limit talking, movement, and phone time during class and services. This is really a dean thing. Front gate should remain locked at all times. So whoever your deans are, make sure that front gate remains locked at all times. And if it needs to be unlocked or anything, let Miss Denise know, whatever. But for security purposes, just make sure that front gate remains locked. Be aware of the surroundings. If you see someone that is not a staff member, report it to the dean or the director or the coordinator. Feel free to question any visitor you see on that campus. If you know them, good. If you don't know them, feel free to question them. Lock all buildings at lights out and keep the cabin doors locked at night. Know your job description. If you have a question about your job description, just see your directors. And if this is your first time, just ask. Ask as many questions as you want to ask. And like my husband said, there's people that's going to be there surrounding you to help you. Be willing to help, even if it's not your role. If you need help, ask. You have a team that is here to help. Cabin leaders, make sure campers are aware of camp rules. Set cabin guidelines. Love your campers. If you have discipline issues, report it to the deans. Deans should handle all discipline issues. Campers are not allowed to leave the campground. Violation of this policy will result in the camper being dismissed and sent home. Campers will be allowed to check no later than 7 p.m. the day after the original start of camp. Campers cannot arrive a day early of camp session or have an extended stay due to safety and insurance policies unless approved by the camp coordinator. Here we go again. No male or female campers should be alone at any time on camp property. That's the 3rd time. Y'all hearing that? So if you see anybody alone, report it to the dean or the directors or Miss Denise. Boy males are strictly prohibited from entering the girls' female cabins, and girls' females are strictly prohibited from entering the boys' male cabins. The use of cell phones is strictly prohibited. Any exceptions will be at the coordinator's discretion. That's for the campers, right, Miss Denise? Campers should stay on the road around cabins. No camper of the opposite sex should be on the sidewalk around cabins at all, no exception. Dress code. Undergarments should be worn at all times. Cover-ups worn to and from the pool. Evening dress should be comfortable and appropriate when praying for staff and campers. Let me stop this and say this. If you're working mine and my husband's camp, if your dress or your skirt doesn't come to your knees, Denise, myself, or our deans are going to ask you to go to your cabin and change. I mean, there's no exception for it. That's huge when you are working at a camp and your dressing is not appropriate. Females, I'm saying this to the females. So if you want to wear a skirt or a dress, that is totally fine. Just make sure it's appropriate. Make sure you can lift your hands. Make sure you can bend over and pray for somebody. Make sure the wind's not going to catch it and blow it up. I mean, I saw some things last year that I was like, whoa. So I done told my husband, campers at the collegiate camp and the camp staff, if it ain't to your knees, just don't bring it. I mean, just don't bring it. And if you have a camper in your cabin and you see that, just kindly and in lovingly way, just tell them to turn around. I know we've had to address them in the past. Kindly turn around and, would you please go put some shorts on or something? So just remember while we're there for Jesus. And so that's huge for me as a female. Staff should not wear items that are too short or too low cut, no midriff showing. That's self-explanatory. When wearing leggings, shirts should be covering. Tank tops should meet the 3-finger rule. No spaghetti strap tank tops without a covering. Shirts should not be cut where midriff or side is exposed. That's all self-explanatory. All campers and staff medication will be kept in the nurse's station and distributed by the nurse. Any medical concerns should be reported to the nurse immediately, and injuries should be reported to the nurse immediately. That's all. Any questions on mine? Come on, Jess. Oh, and if you see little Jesuses around here, they're everywhere. Our youth hid these. So if you see little Jesuses anywhere around here, just get them, please. Get them all. Take them with you.
Okay, so I know you guys just heard 3 times about reporting, but you're about to hear about it even more. If you've been through a camp training before, you know that we go over this in great detail, but it's all just to keep our kids safe. And it only takes one time to really mess you up as a camp, as a ministry. So that's why we go over this so in depth. So why do we need to report? Your help is needed to ensure that abused or neglected children receive adequate protection and services. Designated professionals have a legal obligation to report incidents of child abuse and neglect. Additionally, the occurrence of child abuse neglect can have both short-term and long-term effects on an individual. This section will provide information about some of those effects. So the first we're going to talk about is lifelong problems. So childhood abuse creates lifelong problems. Children learn to think, speak, and reason when they are very young. The human relationships that children form make a big difference in their social and emotional development. Children who have secure, trusting relationships with their parents or guardians when they are young grow up much differently than children who learn at a young age that they can't trust anyone. Their brain development, abuse and neglect can slow their brain development down. Years of research confirm that both abuse and neglect can have devastating consequences on brain development. When children are mistreated, it can stop or slow down their development. Witnessing frequent parental fights and growing up with alcohol or drug abuse, mental illness, physical violence, or crime in the home can make the child unable to pay attention, control their behavior, trust others, show compassion, or make friends. There are 4 major effects of neglect on brain development that are described. So persistent fear response, which is biological reactions impact the brain and neurochemical systems that, in conjunction with the chronic stress of the neglect, can cause a constant state of fear and anxiety. Number 2 is hyperarousal. Children experiencing hyperarousal are often labeled as learning disabled. Number 3 is dissociation. So the brain uses dissociation to smother the memories of neglect or abuse in order to preserve an attachment to that parent, resulting in amnesia for the abuse. Number 4 is disrupted attachment process. So the child's brain will be more focused on meeting the child's day-to-day needs for survival rather than building that foundation for future growth. So the picture on the left shows a healthy, emotionally developed brain, and the picture on the right shows the result of abuse and neglect. The dark areas show where the brain is inactive or underdeveloped. Early correction. So correcting the mistreatment of a child as early as possible is important. The younger the child is when the abuse or neglect stops, the greater the chances are of reducing changes to the brain. Okay, and then who must report? So under the Alabama Child Abuse Reporting Act, anyone may report suspected child abuse or neglect to a duly constituted authority, primarily DHR and law enforcement, when it is suspected that a child is being abused or neglected. However, certain professionals must, by law, report suspected child abuse or neglect. In other words, they are mandated reporters. And then the Code of Alabama defines it as a person, or defines a child as a person under the age of 18. So everybody that'll, for the most part, be at our camp. But if anybody even over that age obviously tells you, you know. It is a Class B misdemeanor, punishable by a sentence of up to 6 months imprisonment or a fine of not more than $500 when a mandated reporter chooses not to report suspected child abuse or neglect. To fulfill the mandate, reports must be made directly to DHR or law enforcement in your county as described in the reporting section of this training. So you report to DHR or law enforcement. Okay? Keep that in mind. Very important. Okay. Mandated reporters in Alabama include the following. So medical personnel, including doctors, nurses, chiropractors, physical therapists, clinic employees, sanitarium employees, physicians, surgeon, medical examiners, coroners, dentists, optometrists, educational personnel, including public and private K-12 employees, teachers, administrators, counselors, post-secondary or higher education employees, law enforcement officers, pharmacists, social workers, mental health professionals, licensed ministers as defined by Rule 505 of the Alabama Rules of Evidence. Clergy are not required to report information they learn about abuse through a confidential communication. However, if they learn of the abuse in any other situation, they are required to report it. And then any other person called upon to render aid or medical assistance to any child when the child is known or suspected to be a victim of child abuse or neglect. So the first step in helping an abused or neglected child is learning to recognize the signs of abuse or neglect. A single sign does not prove that the child abuse or neglect is occurring, and there's no one sign of child abuse or neglect. However, certainty is not required to report, only suspicion. So child physical abuse occurs when serious harm is inflicted non-accidentally on a child by any person age 14 years or older. Children who are physically abused may be self-destructive, aggressive, or withdrawn, run away frequently, explain their injuries in strange or inconsistent ways, seem afraid of adults, including parents or guardians, intentionally hurt animals, or report that an adult is hurting them. And all of these are why being a cabin leader is so important, because I feel like that's the first person they're going to go to and try to open up. If this is going on at home and they've not opened up to anyone in the past, they're going to build that relationship with you and trust you to help them out of that situation. So physically abusive parents may offer no explanation or a conflicting or unconvincing explanation for the child's injury, consistently talk about the child negatively, use harsh physical punishment with the child, or ask teachers or other caregivers to use harsh physical punishment. And then sexual abuse. So, as defined in the Child Abuse Reporting Law, child sexual abuse has its legal basis in Alabama's criminal statutes for sex offenses. These statutes contain specific factors, age, relationship, consent, and deviation, that determine whether sexual activity constitutes child sexual abuse. While the criminal code is specific to persons over the age of 14 being culpable for child sexual abuse of an individual under the age of 18, it is recommended that a report be made on any child sexual behaviors observed regardless of the offender's age. The Alabama Department of Human Resources and/or law enforcement will assess if intervention is warranted. And the Code of Alabama states that child sexual abuse includes the employment, use, persuasion, inducement, enticement, or coercion of any child to engage in or having a child assist in any sexually explicit conduct or any simulation of the conduct for the purpose of providing any visual depiction of the conduct or the rape, molestation, prostitution, or any other form of exploitation of children or incest. So, just to break that down a little bit, sexually abused children may act seductive or engage in inappropriate sex play, show great worry for their siblings, gain or lose a large amount of weight, attempt suicide, feel threatened by physical contact, having difficulty walking or sitting, have nightmares or wet the bed, or run away from home. And that's why safe touch is so important, because you don't want to trigger anybody who may have a history of any of that. Adults who sexually abuse children may be very protective of the child or limit the child's contact with other children, tend to keep to themselves, be jealous or controlling with other family members. And then what constitutes child sexual abuse? So we have sexual molestation, sexual exploitation, sexual penetration, and then sexually transmitted disease. Sexual molestation, so that involves sexual contact with a child when such contact, touching, or interaction over or under the child's clothes is used for arousal or gratification of sexual needs or desires. So it includes, but it's not limited to, fondling, touching, pinching, intimate areas or other parts of the child's body, encouraging, forcing, or permitting a child to inappropriately touch other parts of a person's body, generally associated with sexual activity, contact or touching, however slight but not penetration, between the intimate or sexual parts of the person allegedly responsible for the maltreatment and intimate or sexual parts of a child. And then we have sexual exploitation, which involves sexual use of a child for sexual arousal, gratification, advantage, or profit. It includes, but is not limited to, promoting, allowing, permitting, forcing, intimidating, or encouraging a child to engage in or soliciting patrons for prostitution of a child under age 16. And then same thing in the obscene or photographing, filming, depicting of a child for commercial purposes, exposing sexual organs to a child for the purpose of arousal or gratification, and then promoting, allowing, permitting, forcing, intimidating, or encouraging a child to engage in sexual contact or other activities with other children or adults. Sexual penetration, you guys, I shouldn't have to break this down for you, but any intrusion or entrance, however slight, through the use of digits, through the use of inanimate object, or between the sex organ, mouth, anus, or one person and the sex organ, mouth, or anus of another person. And then sexually transmitted diseases. So a sexually transmitted disease is a disease that was originally acquired as a result of penetration or contact with an afflicted individual. Diagnosis of any non-neonatal sexually transmitted infection in a child who is pre-pubertal, raises the strong possibility of sexual abuse unless proven otherwise, and the presence of any sexually transmitted infection in older children may also be due to sexual abuse. Computers or phones now. Child pornography found on a computer must also, under the law, be reported. And then knowing the signs of neglect. So the first step in helping an abused or neglected child is learning to recognize the signs of abuse or neglect. A single sign doesn't prove that it's occurring, but there's no one sign of the neglect. So, negligent treatment, also referred to as neglect, occurs when parents or primary caregivers negligently fail to protect children from a threat of serious harm. It includes incidents of blatant disregard where children are placed in harmful and dangerous situations that require precautionary measures to protect them. And then some types of neglect include inadequate clothing, personal hygiene, medical neglect, inadequate food, abandonment, failure to thrive, inadequate shelter, inadequate supervision. And then some children who are neglected may always be sleepy or tired, steal food or money, or beg from classmates, report that no caretaker is at home, have frequent absences from school, show extreme loneliness and need for affection, show an obvious lack of needed medical, dental, or vision care, be physically dirty and have body odor, wear clothing that is not appropriate for the weather, or use alcohol or drugs. And then knowing the signs of the neglect, mental abuse, involves extreme and aberrant behavior that directly results in severe impairment to a child's functioning. It occurs when parent or caregiver behaviors interfere with the normal emotional development of a child. Examples that may indicate the mental abuse or neglect include, but are not limited to, family violence episodes occur. The child's school grades drop significantly. The child becomes severely emotionally disturbed. The parent repeatedly demeans, curses, yells, and or screams at the child, or the child becomes suicidal or violent. And then mentally abused or neglected children may have habits such as sucking, rocking, head banging, or biting, not like to be around people, even parents or guardians, break things on purpose, be too passive or too aggressive with others, engage in criminal behavior such as stealing, intentionally hurt animals, attempt suicide, seem cold or distant to other children or to other adults, become violently angry without warning, choose to be alone, be uncomfortable when someone shows them care or concern. So, inadequate supervision involves failure to provide supervision that protects the children from serious physical harm or sexual abuse. And factors to consider would be the children's age, physical and mental condition, and developmental stage, particularly as they result to the ability to make sound judgments about providing self-care and protection. Children's location and the parents' presence or accessibility to the children, and then frequency and duration of occurrence and time of day or night incident occurred. Abandonment. So abandonment may exist when the parent or guardian of the child relinquishes caregiving responsibility and there's either no current appropriate caregiver or the current caregiver can no longer provide care. So reporting. A report is a statement that someone is concerned for a child's welfare. That someone is you. And as mentioned earlier in this training, it is a Class B misdemeanor when a mandated reporter chooses not to report suspected child abuse or neglect. So when you're reporting, what do you need to include? When you file a report, give the following information to the best of your ability. So names of the children suspected of being abused or neglected, his or her whereabouts, names of the persons suspected of harming the child and their relationship to the child, birth dates or ages of all children involved, name and addresses of the parents, guardians, or caretakers, as much specific information as you know about the suspected abuse and neglect. If known, any evidence of previous injuries to the child and any other pertinent information that might establish the cause of such injury or injuries and the identity of the person or persons responsible for the same. Mandated reporters are required to follow up a verbal report with a written report. So it might be a good idea, like if they do disclose to you, to kind of write down as soon as possible everything that you remember that they've told you, just so that you can remember all the individual details that might not seem as important right in the moment. So confidentiality. Is your report confidential? A mandated reporter's identity is kept confidential as it is possible to do so. It may be released if the information is sent to the DA or a law enforcement agency, or if the court becomes involved. Any person making a good faith report is immune from any civil or criminal liability that might otherwise be incurred or imposed. Reporting past abuse. If the child is still under the age of 18, you should report any past unreported neglect or abuse that you learn about or suspect to the DHR office in your county. To the DHR office. Reports received on persons age 18 or older involving incidents that occurred when the person was under age 18 are not considered a child abuse neglect report. Mandated reporters may contact the appropriate law enforcement agency to file an incident report, as these situations may be appropriate for criminal prosecution. Assessment. So after you submit your report, DHR will make a determination at intake as to whether there is sufficient information and basis from the report to plan for the next steps. When a county social worker is assigned to conduct an assessment of a report, he or she will make efforts to talk to the children alleged that they've been abused or neglected, the parents and primary caregiver, the persons allegedly responsible for the abuse or neglect, other children in the home, other adults in the home, and then collaterals. Sufficiently detailed information will be collected through the interviews, observations, and written materials provided by knowledgeable individuals in order to complete child abuse neglect assessment analysis and decision making. So the outcomes. Who is notified? The mandated reporter who filed the report shall receive written notification of the disposition, but will not receive information regarding the actual investigation. In addition, the following people are notified, orally or in writing, of the disposition: the child's parents, legal custodian or primary caregiver, the person allegedly responsible for the abuse or neglect, parents of children who attend an out-of-home care setting, if applicable. So, Camp Boothe policy. The Church of God of Prophecy International, Alabama State Ministries, Camp Boothe Board, Camp Boothe Coordinator will not tolerate any form of child abuse. The civil and legal liability of the church. So the church and its personnel are accountable for the acts of its staff, even though neither the church or the leaders are aware of the abuse or condoned it. Victims attempting to hold churches accountable by alleging that the church is liable for the acts of its personnel, paid or unpaid. The church was negligent in its hiring or accepting personnel. The church was negligent in the supervising or monitoring of its personnel. So we desire to be a safe place for all children, youth, and adults who attend any activity or ministry. This policy applies to all volunteers and compensated workers on any aspect of the Church of God of Prophecy. Sorry, I'm struggling right now. Okay. Screening for volunteer and compensated workers. To volunteer, you must be regular church attendees for at least 6 months. You must complete the following before being allowed to volunteer. So you must complete the Camp Boothe staff application, the background check, pastor endorsement, and must attend a camp training. Volunteers must sign a written acknowledgement stating that they have received and reviewed a copy of the Church of God of Prophecy Child, Youth, and Worker Protection Policy, which is what we're doing right now. Any adult volunteer or compensated worker who has been convicted of a crime against a child or a violent crime against another adult will not be provided services in any church-sponsored activity or program. And the application and screening will be kept confidential unless it's required to be released for legal reasons. Okay, general policies for supervision of caregivers. Caregivers shall not engage in any form of sexual abuse or physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, or neglect. Minimum of 2 adults working together. Windows of rooms will remain uncovered to allow a clear view of classroom activities. If you're talking with a student one-on-one, the door should remain open. All campers should take care of their own bathroom needs. All campers are to be released to the parent or guardian. Persons other than the camper's parent or guardian must be authorized beforehand to pick up the camper. A positive approach to discipline will be practiced. Make sure rules are clear, consistent, and age appropriate. Reporting suspected abuse or neglect. It is the responsibility of the camp coordinator to report all cases of suspected child abuse or neglect to the proper legal authorities within 24 hours of it being discovered. As a caregiver, you are mandated reporter of child abuse or neglect. It is the legal responsibility of a mandated reporter to report all cases of child abuse or neglect that you observe and visible signs of alleged abuse or neglect. Guidelines for reporting. Upon observing and suspecting abuse, the caregiver shall immediately do the following. Make sure the child's safety and comfort are secured. Make sure the suspected abuser is safely away from the children. And then report the abuse or neglect promptly to your director, your pastors, camp coordinator, and it's important to discuss the incident initially only with any of these individuals. And then the response of the Church of God of Prophecy. So the primary function of the Church of God of Prophecy in responding to allegations of sexual abuse or neglect is to attempt to provide pastoral care to all who are affected to ensure the safety and protection of persons who have been or may be harmed, seek healing by providing pastoral care and other needed assistance to all who are affected, and to the extent possible, respect the privacy and rights of the parties involved and the confidentiality of communications. So, the responsibilities of the camp staff. Take all allegations of child abuse and or neglect seriously. Document all efforts at handling the incident. Contact the Department of Children and Family Services or its equivalent agency within 24 hours. Report the incident immediately to the church insurance company and attorney. Do not try to handle this without outside assistance. Notify the parents or guardians. Do not confront the accused until the safety of the camper is secured. Do not prejudge the situation. Treat the accused with dignity and support. Do not discuss allegations with any staff member other than the coordinator, director, dean, or camp pastor. Video.
So we know the video is not, I'm sorry, I know it's live stream. The video is not linking very well, but while you are taking the quiz, he's going to put the QR code up for the quiz, and we hope it works. Jacob's been working on the quiz, so hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to work.
That's the QR code for child protection.
Yes, that's the child protection QR code. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to take that. And while y'all can y'all listen and take the quiz too? Okay. So just a couple of reminders I wanted to tell y'all. Support staff, they have a hard job. So if you're a cabin leader, help them out. If you see the garbage overflowing in the cafeteria, go over there and get it out. I mean, I do that. If I see there's a ton of garbage, I go get the garbage and I pull it out and all that stuff. Oh, she hadn't seen the video yet. We're about to show it. So help them out by picking up and emptying the garbage and doing all those things. The thing about the visitor, that is very important. If you see someone on the campground that you're like, they hadn't been here, I don't know who they are, do not be afraid to go up and ask them, who are you? What are you doing here? You got to go to the staff house to sign in. And I'm sure I've probably told all of you this before. You've probably heard this story. But Terry Gann and I were a dean one year, and we saw these two men walking across the campground. And I was like, it was the year Bishop Jones had passed away, the first camp after that. And I thought, who is that? So I went up to them, and I was like, who are y'all? You need to go in the staff house, and you need to sign in. Well, it was now our general presbyter. It was Bishop Coulter and Duke Stone that had come to visit the campground just to make sure everything was going smoothly since we didn't have an overseer. And if I'll do it to him, I'll do it to anybody. So make sure you're questioning visitors. Commissioning night. This is the main one I wanted to tell y'all about. Commissioning night is very important. Invite your pastor. Even if there's not any campers from your church there, you're there, right? They need to come support you, okay? So make sure your pastor knows they are invited whether they have campers there that week or not. Now I'm going to hush and let you finish the quiz. It's there too. The QR code's there. Okay, live stream. If you can't get the QR code, if you can't get it to work, you can go to the Camp Boothe website and the QR code is there.
I think you watch on your phone. You can like screenshot it, go to your photos and hold it down and all that. But
So why is this not pulling up? Haley, I may need to use your computer because my Wi-Fi's not coming up on this one. No, I did it on my iPad and not. Wait a minute, let me just do this. We're getting ready to do the very last thing. I'm trying to get y'all out of here quickly as possible, but we're going to show a video now for those who are finished. That take a couple minutes, go to the bathroom. There's some water out there. I think there's some snacks out there too. Grab you some water. Watch the video. Stretch your legs. The next portion is not going to be near as long as what Jess had to do, but stretch your legs and all that while the video's playing and while everybody's finishing the quiz. Here's your 1 minute warning. 1 minute warning. Thirty-second warning. All right, let's start making our way in here so we can get this next section out of the way so we can go to the house. Okay, I'm going to be very quick with this next section and everything. We've had to do some. Yeah. What? What were you going to say? Huh? I said ignore me. Ignore you? We have had to do some policies and all this kind of stuff. It's sad that we have to do this, but I'm going to go through them really quickly. That way we can get you out of here, but there is a quiz at the end of this too, so we can just have proof that we've done it, and if something happens in court, we're good. All right, so our mission, we are committed to being the leading Christian camping ministry for every age and race group. I am going to stand on my name, which doesn't mean much, but I believe Alabama Camping Ministries, Camp Boothe, is the best camping ministry in the COGOP. How many agree? Yeah, okay. So and I said that because we have some Kentucky people in here, but you know. So we have the best staff, we have the best campers, and we want everyone to know that everyone is welcome. It doesn't matter your disability, it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your socioeconomic background, it doesn't matter. We are here for everyone. Everyone needs Jesus, and we want to provide a glimpse of Jesus to everyone we have come in contact with. So our vision for camping ministry goes beyond the local church, okay? We are partners with the local church. We are not camp, and the church is not church, right? We are together. We work together to go and serve others and lead others to Jesus. So what we're going to do here, I know it looks like a lot, but I promise you I'm going to go through it fast. We're going to do we've already done the child protection, medical, weather, fire, pool, lost camper, bomb threat, discipline, suicide, homicide, and active shooter, okay? All those things are things that are out there in the world now that we have to have a precaution for. We have to have a policy for. I hope to the good Lord it never happens on Camp Boothe campgrounds, right? But we never know, okay? So we want to be prepared. We want to be proactive. No one is going to be denied the benefits of the camping program based on the campgrounds race. I've already said that. For example, can I tell about our little friend that came last year? So last year, Brother Shane called me and said, I have a little boy in my church, and I went to visit their church, and he would really like to come to camp, but he's nonverbal for the most part. He he has autism, and he said, can he come? And I said, yes. He said, well, he might have some accidents at night. He might need to wear some things at night. And I was like, so what? Who cares? Jesus loves him too, right? He went to Pee Wee camp last year and had the time of his life. No one ever knew anything that was going on with him from the cabin or anything like that. His cabin leader was phenomenal with him. So that is a testament to how we reach out to everybody. It doesn't matter your disability. It doesn't matter if you get it. It doesn't matter if you are the smartest person in the world. We are here for everyone. And we want him to come this year, and I'm going to share this as well, but he's having some medical issues. So when you pray, can you please pray for JW? He is a camp kid, and he came last year, and he's having some medical issues, and we need to touch heaven for him. Okay? Put that on your prayer list, okay? Child protection, Jess has already been through this. We will not tolerate any form of abuse. I'm not going to go into all that again because she did a great job. Aren't you glad you didn't have to listen to me the whole time this year? Again, I was like, y'all can't do it anymore. It's over. Okay, camp medical personnel. So your nurse will screen for lice the first day of camp. Ooh, no, she won't. Your directors will get somebody else to do that because your nurse will have to take the medication, okay? But when your nurse gets there, when your campers get there, she's going to make sure they look healthy. She's going to make sure they're not running a fever and they're not throwing up. If they are, they can't stay, right? She's also going to be in charge of any illness, any injury, or anything that's happening at camp, okay? We don't like to send people home because they're sick, but if we have to, we will. If they're running a fever, we will send them home. We don't want the whole campground to have to go home like a couple of years ago at winter conference when everybody got sick all at one time. So in the event of illness or injury, you must contact the nurse immediately. If someone stay there with the injured person, but send someone to get the nurse, okay? A runner, the directors, calling them, whatever it might be. Don't move the person unless their life is in danger, okay? The nurse is going to see if it's necessary for us to call 911. We will not transport to the doctor or to the emergency room anymore, okay? If there is an injury, if there's something medical that's going on that is a true emergency, we will call 911. Cabin leaders, if there's a medical emergency, you take control of the rest of the campers, move them away, because you know how kids are. They like to get all up in the business, okay? So we're going to move them completely away from that. The nurse is going to keep all medications. They're going to dispense them at the proper time. There is a form they have to complete out every time they give a pill, okay? There is a log that they have to complete every time they give a Band-Aid, okay? So that's how we keep our medical stuff. If I go in there, I went and looked at the medical logs one time, and I saw Denise came in on Tuesday, June 23rd at blah, blah, blah time to get a Tylenol. I mean, they detailed everything, even for staff and campers, okay? If the camper's running a fever or vomits more than once, they have to go home. The medical personnel keeps up to their notes. They're used to that because they do it in their jobs every day. We also have an injury documentation. It's an accident medical injury report form. We complete that and keep it in with our binder for that camp and everything, in case we have to go back and look at it for any reason. Whenever there is a medical issue or an injury or anything, the nurse calls the parent, okay? I know you as cabin leaders, you want to be in a good relationship with your parents, but leave that up to the nurse, okay? The parent might call you after the fact and say, how is Johnny doing? And then you can say, oh, they're better, that kind of thing. But that initial phone call needs to come from the nurse. This is very important. No staff member should discuss camper medical information with other campers or staff members. Even if someone were to get a stomach bug, you don't need to go over and say, I heard Denise had a stomach bug. Have you heard that? That's breaking confidentiality. That's breaking their HIPAA, okay? It does not matter if they're in your cabin, if they're in someone else's cabin. We do not want to break HIPAA and tell what's going on, okay? Weather policies. So you know we have some weather down at the Camp Boothe. In the event of severe weather, thunderstorms, whatever, we're going to get all of the campers together. And if we can, we're going to get them back to the cabins and keep them inside the cabins. That's why cabin leaders, it's important for you to bring cards. The younger ones bring color sheets and crayons and all the things like that to keep them occupied if there's an event of a storm or something they have to sit in the cabin with. We'll monitor all of the weather conditions and everything. If we come under a tornado watch or warning, of course a watch, we're watching, but a warning, your places of safety are going to be down in the multipurpose building behind the stairs, in the bathrooms downstairs of the multipurpose building, in the cafeteria, in the bathrooms, in the banquet closet, in the cooler. Those of you who are hot-natured can stay in there. That will not be me because it gets very cold in there. But we do have places. You can get downstairs to the staff house, all the places like that. And trust me, we have been there, and when you get 118, 20 teenagers behind the bleachers, where the bleachers used to be, we can get some Discovery and Pee Wee campers in that little area, okay? Y'all remember that at Winter Conference a few years ago where we had to go back there? Okay, so if we can do that and stay there for a little bit, we can get some Discovery and Senior and everything there. In the event that there is a tornado warning or anything, we will make the call out to the parents, okay? That does not need to come from the cabin leaders. It doesn't need to come from a support staff. It needs to come from our social media page, us calling the bishop, and the bishop sending out a phone call or something like that, okay? They don't need to hear multiple reports from multiple people. It needs to stay one local person. Fire emergency. So if you see a fire and it's in a building, you need to, of course, get everybody out of that building, right? If the fire is in the cafeteria, are we going to walk past the cafeteria to the softball field? No. I mean, y'all are just sitting there. No, we are not going to walk past the fire. So you want to judge where the fire is located before you judge where they should go. Now, if it's in a dorm, softball field, right? If it's in the cafeteria, valley, okay? Those are going to be our two meeting places, the valley or the softball field. That way you knowing where it is. The camp coordinator or the director is going to, in all of these situations, the camp coordinator or the director will say, Sabrina, call 911, okay? Like when you did the CPR, hey, you in the white shirt, call 911, okay? They will designate who to call 911. Evacuate the building if you're in a building with a fire. Make sure, cabin leaders, that once we get in an area, you count your campers and let the deans know, hey, I'm good, I've got all mine, okay? Just a simple little thumbs up, they'll know what you mean, okay? Pool emergency. We must have a certified lifeguard in the pool whenever the pool is open to campers. If you see something going on in the pool, you need to let the lifeguard and the nurse know immediately. All staff members trained with CPR needs to go to the pool. The director will be the one to call 911, will notify the parents. But if there is something going on in the pool, we need to get all the other kids out of the pool, not just out of the swimming pool, but out of the pool area, okay? They need to go outside. And if that's instant, you don't need to say, well, you need to cover up before you go out there. No, they can cover up when they get out there, okay? It's an emergency. Let's just get them out for the time being, okay? And then they can cover up when they get out. We must have a lifeguard at all times in the pool. Even if it's water day, the lifeguard needs to be in the pool area just in case. They have to do a swimming test to let them in the deep end. We have bands. We have red, yellow, and green. Green means they can go in the deep end. Yellow means you need to keep an eye on them. Red means no, nowhere near the deep end, okay? All the equipment that we need is located at the pool, so we should not have to go looking for that. No pushing, wrestling, running, roughhousing, or anything like that in the pool area. They don't need to swim if they have abrasions and all that kind of stuff. You can read it all there. Colds, coughs, inflamed eye infection, staph infection. They must wear a robe or a t-shirt or something to the pool over their swimsuit. Okay, lost camper. Hopefully this never happens. If you find your camper is lost and they're not where they're supposed to be, please contact the deans and the directors immediately. There was one year I was a cabin leader, and I don't know if y'all were I think you were the deans. So Darlene came and said, "You got all you girls?" And I was going, and I did it a third time, and I was like, "No, I'm missing somebody." And so she and I take off to the cabin first to see if there were other adults. If we were at service that night, other adults. We went to the cabin. We searched the cabin all over, and I was beginning to get worried because at first we didn't find her in the cabin. Girls' dorm too, y'all know, upstairs in the bathroom they got that closet and that floor. She was hiding in that closet. So yeah, it took us quite a bit of time to find her, and I was stressed out. I think Darlene was about stressed out too. But make sure anytime you go somewhere, just do a quick little head count. By Monday evening, you may not know their names, but you know their faces. So make sure you do a head count and find them. If we can't find them, if we had not found her, we would have started, go look in this dorm, go look in this dorm. We would have got them all out, okay? And a hand-to-hand search if we need to in the woods. We'll call 911. Again, that's the director's call, okay? Bomb threat. Evacuate the building where that's supposed to be. And this says by portable horn, phone, verbally. We don't have a portable horn, so unless you hear one of us yelling across the campground, make sure that you're listening. Make sure that you pay attention to if someone comes running up to you and tells you something, okay? Keep it confidential, especially away from the campers. We don't want the campers to get all stressed out and emotional and all that kind of stuff. Again, it says evacuate to the ball field, but depending on where it's located, okay? And then we'll call 911. Discipline policy. All discipline problems need to be reported to the director or dean immediately. That doesn't mean a little bickering in the cabin, okay? Cabin leaders, you are free to handle that, okay? That's your serious discipline issues, okay? You need to let the deans know. That's going to, and I always say that the camper needs to have confidence in you, okay? If it's going to be something that's really, really big, let them be mad at the dean the rest of the week instead of mad at you, okay? Does that make sense? Do not deprive them of food. Do not isolate them. Do not subject them to corporal punishment. No mistreatment. No physical exercise. Taking them 5 minutes out of the pool. Absolutely, we can do that. Okay, but don't do any of the corporal things. The camp director will be responsible to interpret the rules and carry out the discipline policy. The director should contact the camp coordinator for any serious matters. And then if we have to, we'll call the parents. I've had to do that before. Some serious things going on. I've had to call the parents. Was that a good phone call? Thankfully, the parent was a good parent and they understood, but that's not an easy phone call to make. All right, this one, active shooter. So, this is one we did new a couple of years ago. So again, it's going on in the world around us. We know we have our neighbors across the street that love to shoot their guns and target practice and all that kind of stuff, okay? We can determine whether that gunfire is coming from across the street or on the campground. So we have to be able to do that first. We're going to evacuate if we can evacuate, okay? If there's a way to get out of the building and into the woods, that's where you want to go. They teach us at school to run, hide, fight, okay? You run for your life. If you can't run, you hide, And if there's somebody right there, you fight for everything you have in you, okay? Already have an escape plan in your mind. When I'm sitting there in the chapel, I already have in my mind, if something happens, we have a door in the back, we have a door on the side, and we have a door right here. And we have all the windows. If I have to, I'll bust a window to throw kids out, okay? So make sure you have a plan in your mind. Evacuate regardless of whether the others agree to follow. You leave. You don't try to make, now, of course, you want your little 6-year-old campers to come with you, right? But if I'm sitting there and I'm trying to leave and Clinton doesn't want to come with me, I'm like, okay, dude, bye. Right? You can fend for yourself. All right? Leave your belongings behind. Help others escape if possible. Prevent individuals from entering the area where the active shooter may be. So we want to keep people from being in there. Keep your hands visible. Follow the instructions of any police officers that show up. So what I do before camping season starts, before Pee Wee Camp, I go to the Sheriff's Department there in Bibb County, and I go to the Woodstock Police Department, and I say, we're here until June, blah, 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 and can you make extra little trips around our campground? And they do. I mean, it's just a service that they provide. But if we had to call 911 because of an active shooter, they're going to come in. We've already given them our active shooter plan. I had a police officer help me draw this up and everything. He said, get it to that sheriff's department, get it to that police department. That way they know a map of the whole campground. So they have that. But our job is, when they're there, we have to have our hands visible, because they're going to think if your hands are in your pocket, you're the shooter, okay? So make sure you have your hands visible. Make sure you tell your campers that too. So the hide. If evacuation is not possible, find a place to hide where the active shooter is less likely to find you. Out of the shooter's view, protected. If you're in the cabin, if you're in the multi-purpose building, you don't want to get where that little window is where they can see straight in. You want to sit over to the side. A lot of you have been in school recently. You know the drills, right? So put the chair up under the door. Do something to keep them out, okay? Lock the door, barricade the door. Silence your cell phones or your pagers. Turn off any source of noise. Don't talk. Try not to breathe loud, but when your adrenaline gets running, right, you're going to be doing some of that. Remain calm. That's the main thing. We got to remain calm in front of our campers. We can't let them see us freak out. Although inside, I would be freaking out. But so the last one is to fight. So if you are somewhere and that active shooter is there with you, you need to fight, okay? That means throwing things. That means lunging at them, whatever the case may be. You need to be able to fight to protect your kids. Yelling, committing to your actions, because, and I'm just going to be blunt here, if you fight, it will probably be fighting to the death, okay? But if I'm fighting, I'm going to fight to the death for my child. She may be 28 years old now, but I will fight to the death for my child. I will fight to the death for my other children that I have watched grow up in camp, right? That's what we need to do as staff at camp. We need to be able to fight to the death for our kids at camp, okay? When authorities arrive, remain calm. You don't talk to them. Don't come out and say, he's over here, blah, 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 blah. They have a procedure they have to follow, okay? If they need to know something, they will ask you. You just go where they're telling you to go, okay? Hands visible at all times. Avoid making quick movements toward the officers. Don't hold them up. Don't scream or yell. Don't stop them just to ask stuff. Okay, so homicide ideations, policy procedures, I don't have that in here yet, but that is when someone says, Denise makes me so mad, I've got a gun in my car, I'm going to go get it, and I'm going to kill her. We have got to report that kind of stuff. Or my mom and dad are abusive to me. When I get home, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to, they have to verbally say that. So we are getting a policy for that. Y'all, it's sad that we have to have a policy for all these things, but we will have to report that kind of stuff. Last year, unfortunately, we had someone that wrote out a suicide note while they were at camp. So our guidelines for suicide, take every suicide threat seriously. We don't want to say, oh, they're just joking. You know how they play around. Everything is serious. All talk about suicide must be taken seriously, and prompt attention should be given to any child who threatens suicide. So I will tell you, those campers who brought that to my attention last year, immediately we went and got that camper, and they never left their cabin leader's side. When that camper went to the bathroom, that cabin leader was outside the door. One time he wasn't, and I was like, where's so-and-so? And he was like, oh. And he went, luckily he was still in where a lot of people were. But we need to explain to the student the next steps in the interventions, okay? So we need to approach the camper and say, this was said to me, we have steps we have to follow, and all the things, okay? We have to do this in school. If something like this happens at school and I don't report it, I lose my teaching certificate. This is just like with child abuse. If I don't report it, I lose my teaching certificate. If I don't report this, I lose my teaching certificate, okay? So we want to make sure everything is reported. Act immediately. Escort the student to the camp coordinator, camp pastor, or a designee. Never leave the student alone. Remain calm. Your responsibility to the student in crisis is limited to listening, being supportive, and getting him or her to a trained professional. Under no circumstances should you attempt to counsel the student. That's not your job, okay? Thankfully, on our staff, at every one of our camps this year, we have a mental health counselor. And last year, she was on our staff. We took that camper to her. She did the necessary evaluation, and then we made the next steps, okay? Kadian Jordan Smoot, what is her last name now, is our mental health counselor, okay? She does this every day at school. She works for the school. So make sure that somebody knows so that we can get them to Kadian, they can do an evaluation, okay? Refrain from getting into a debate whether suicide is right or wrong. That camper does not need to hear that. Or staff member. It could be a staff member that says that. That person does not need to hear if it's right or wrong. Okay? They need to hear that you love them and that you're going to help them. Okay? Just tell them that you have to report. It's mandatory. You have to report. So what we're going to do, Kadian's going to get them. She's going to talk to them. We're going to contact the parent. We're going to say, this is what happened. This is what we're doing. We are going to, last year when this happened, we contacted the parent. The parent said they have a counselor. Can you call their counselor? Yes, we called their counselor, talked to their counselor. He talked to the counselor. We deemed that it was not an immediate threat and everything. His counselor said, I will come down there, I will do but he had like a session on the phone with him and everything, and we were all good. But make sure, even for the rest of the week, if this happens on Monday, the rest of the week, make sure you have some kind of eyes on that camper, okay? We don't want him or her to feel unwanted, unloved, and shower them with extra love and extra attention, okay? Harassment. This is staff to staff, staff to camper, camper to camper, camper to staff. It is the policy of Camp Boothe that no camper or staff shall engage or be subject to bullying, violence, threats or violence, again, or intimidation by any other camper or staff. So harassment or bullying means a continuous pattern of intentional behavior that takes place on or off. That word is significant. On or off Camp Boothe property, included but not limited to cyberbullying, written, electronic, verbal, physical, and we will not tolerate it. If you have been accused of some type of harassment or bullying, and we investigate it and it is found to be true, you will be asked to leave camp and you will not be asked back. Okay? To work or as a camper. Okay? Because we don't want that kind of reputation at Camp Boothe. Y'all can read all that. I'm not going to read everything word for word. That's what I just said. We will investigate, of course. We will, get all parties involved and everything. So that is all the policies that we have. Does anyone have a question? You got that QR code, Brandon? Got another quiz. Quiz time. He's going to put up the QR code. And I should have emphasized the questions, but I don't remember what they are right now. But I think they're pretty easy. So some people are telling me that it's not giving you a grade. I don't know. We'll look it up. Jacob Butler. With that being said, we are done. But before we leave, I would like for Pastor James to come and just pray over our staff, our directors, board. Pastor James is one of our camp board members. If you didn't know, Pastor James is a camp board member, Jacob is a board member, Pastor Dustin is a board member, I'm a board member. Those are the only ones here, right? Yeah, I think so. So I'm going to ask him to pray us out.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this time of training and education. Thank you for everyone who has helped us and served today and prepared this time. Lord, we pray again just for a season of camping, Lord, that your favor just rest upon from the beginning to the end, from the big ideas to the small details. We pray for safe travels, Lord, as we leave this place today to go back to our homes, and for just a powerful service, Lord, where your Holy Spirit is evident and ministers in a life-changing way tomorrow in each of our church homes. Father, we give you all the praise, and we ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
If you did not register online, please come up here and register online, or you will not have proof that you were here, and you will have to do all of this again.